I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Yuwad and Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be watching today's episode.
We're leading it with judgment and belittling and dehumanizing people and wondering why they continue to get sucked in the vicious cycle of addiction.
Follow all these people, keep flooding your mind with it because the power of that is insane and people don't realize it.
But I'm really proud of myself that slingshotting out of that, I realized the immense power and need for me to engage in professional help.
Welcome to shtsfcked, the podcast that gets real about addiction, mental health, and everything in between. I'm Paris, and I spent 17 years battling the bottle, 10 years hooked on meth, and I also did a stint in the escorting world, which nearly cost me everything, including my life. I was lost, disconnected, and completely unrecognizable from who I once was. With both lived and professional experience, including qualifications in alcohol and other drugs, I'm here to share what I've learned along the way. Shtsfcked isn't about offering the right way to recover. It's about showing that recovery is actually very personal. Every journey is unique, and this podcast brings you stories, insights, and practical tools to help you find what works for you. Now, just a disclaimer, we dive into some tough topics here, including addiction, all forms of abuse, trauma, mental illness, suicide, self-harm, and the realities of life in recovery. These discussions can be intense, so please take care while listening and just make sure you're in the right headspace too. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast. Your support actually helps us more than you know, and it's one of the best ways to keep these conversations going. I hope you enjoy the show. And welcome to the show, Ben from Beyond All Bounds. Thank you so much for joining us today.
G'day. Nice to meet you properly in this format. I just want to say thank you. The correspondence, everything leading up to this, I've been really excited. So really a pleasure to be here today. Thanks.
Oh, bless your cotton socks, Ben. I really appreciate that. Now, for our listeners out there, we're actually both from Perth, which is very unusual for me to be interviewing someone who's actually in the same state as me. I'm often interviewing someone who's interstate or international, so it's actually really nice to be on the same time zone as someone right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was almost going to say, do you want to do something in person? But you've got the whole setup. And I even put my plants and I just orientate a little bit. So got my little set going.
You've done more than me. I mean, I've just got a really plain backdrop. I think you can see one plant sticking out and that's about it.
You're doing awesome.
You've done. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it. So I like to just dive straight on in. I'm not a fluff around person. I do that in the intro. I love a good fluff around in the intro. So we will just dive straight on into it. So Ben, Can you start by sharing the story behind founding Beyond All Bounds and what inspired you to create this organization here in Perth?
Firstly, I suppose just really quickly, I'll say I'm a bloke. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a mate. I think I'm a good mate. And my number one claim to fame really though is I'm a dad, and that's more recent with my son being just over 1 year old now. So massive transition in life. And I think about those titles and identities and these sort of labels that we place on ourselves. And a big part of the reason the inception of Beyond All Bounds was really it's really around a theme about identity and self-discovery and also losing oneself as well. So it was really birthed out of lived experiences of mental illness and the kinds of moments that were like so engulfed with grief and shame and escapism that the drugs and alcohol and other kinds of things became a part of my story. And I'm happy to expand on all of that today. And, but Beyond All Bounds was really a vehicle for myself to heal, and it was maybe going to start as a blog or it was just it just was, and it was whatever it was going to become. And naturally, it sort of unfurled and evolved into what it is, which now it is a social enterprise. I guess we're a micro social enterprise at this point. We've got a team of 7, including me and my beautiful wife, Serene. Everyone's a contractor. We don't have that kind of dough yet, but we're really forward focused on impact-driven workshops, facilitation. That's really my jam. That's what I love the most. Facilitating powerful conversations, educational workshops. I love talking, love a good yarn like this. So haven't really done many podcasts. I think I've very honestly been sort of moving through waves of like self-belief and self-doubt, and some of that sort of crippled me at times and really stopped me from finding my authentic voice. But, everything's sort of opening up for me now, and I feel a lot's changed, especially becoming a dad. So with that and much, much more, but we've impacted thousands through our workshops. And, it's never lost on me. Just as a quick example, I got a text the other day from a bloke who said, Ben, you were not reinventing the wheel, but the workshop we did around brave and courageous conversations, I guess, helped me reconnect with my estranged kids. And I have found a deeper bond and connection with them. And I was able to take ownership and drop the victimhood. And I was like, mate, forget the outcomes of the workshop. That trumps all of that.
That's right? Amazing.
And without ego, I say this is a very, very common occurrence. And I realize it doesn't just come down to me. It comes down to the safe spaces, the emotional safety we create in our workshops, which lead to the ability to give people permission to talk about what's fucking real, what's alive in them.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that, this is being born out of your lived experience as well. So I do want to actually talk a little bit more about that. What were you going through earlier in your life that did lead you to create Beyond All Bounds? Like, would you be open to sharing that with us a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Cool. I'm an Army kid. You got 50 years of combined service between mum and dad in the Australian Regular Army. And both of them sort of ascended as much as you can as soldiers, not officers. And we moved around a heap as a kid, as a family. And I think that's where I developed how to build relationships quickly and use the gift of the gab, I guess. I always, from a young kid, I always even if I didn't act from that place all the time, even as an adult, I always seemingly had this strong sense of emotional and social intelligence. Like I could read a room, I could read people, and I sort of, it was good and bad because I became a bit of a chameleon to fit in because I needed to. So it was born out of necessity, I guess. But I also, it wasn't all doom and gloom. I really thrived with that, and I'm proud of myself for that. The shadow side to that, of course, and this is not just about the Army family, that was just part of my experience, but I was a little bit of a delinquent as a kid, I'll be honest, despite having a lot of the safety and middle-class Aussie family, all of the attributes that is, I understand my relative privilege, but I still went looking for trouble. I guess it was just curiosity, excitement, wanting to live a rich life full of experiences, even if it was a little bit naughty at times. So I sort of, I kind of gravitated towards a lot of different kinds of people. And found myself able to win sort of that base level respect and connection with a lot of people. I did also, I've had a barrage of different kinds of work, professional history, if you want to call it that, or work history. I've worked in fly in, fly out remote sites, which taught me a lot of great things, and also sort of fell victim to some of the trappings in there, the peer circles, the alcoholism, when everything was going great until it wasn't. Not low financial IQ, so I wasn't, I was just coming back and spending my money, and I worked in sales, worked in marketing, customer service-based roles. So I realized it was always the things I excelled best at, though, were always the things that had a communication element. But enter, I suppose, me hanging up the cotton drill and the high vis, and I entered into the hospitality space. I started as just a young kid with a lot of crew. I wouldn't say, and bless them all, and I love them all for what they all brought into my life at different times. But when I look back, some of the relationships and the enabling peer circles I was in was relatively toxic for me. Like we were all enabling our own drug habits, and we're all ultimately like just little boys inside trying to fit in, trying to find our way. But we also had some of the best times of our lives as well. So I was producing music and DJing, and that really, I always loved music ever since a kid, and I really did sort of go all in. There was no plan B. It was just producing music and DJing and running events and club nights and hanging out at bars, and the night became a bit of a nocturnal animal. And just basically push it into the amber, into the red, in a lot of social settings. Big chip on my shoulder, ego. Again, all coming from a place of, honestly, like insecurity and trying to figure out who I was. But it definitely contributed to what would then lead on later to be these neural pathways, which got really, really solid and strong and familiar for me, to both escape emotional pain, to find ease at times where there was stress, even though I probably should have been dealing with it in different ways. I didn't take a lot of ownership and accountability for my future, what was coming, the damage I was doing to people in my relationships. There's a lot there. But again, some of the best times of my life, and also the underbelly of that sort of world, got me in a lot of trouble. It also made me show up inauthentically in large part. And I think that there's a big element of that, a big thread that you could pull off that was a big part of the reason why I ended up struggling with drugs and alcohol in the end. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's quite a transition as well to be going from FIFO into the hospitality and becoming a DJ. Like what actually made you take that sudden action?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a very clear answer, to be honest. And this might come out a bit jagged and rough for listeners, but I got sick to death of seeing people kill themselves. So much suicide, so much mental illness. And back then in 2008-ish time, very different to current day in the mines and stuff in Western Australia. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, five people I knew and friends, and then other people back in Sydney where I'm from, and accidental death, overdose, just dealt with so much grief and had no idea how to deal with it, and I had people sort of saying, oh, yeah, no, you'll be right. Oh shit, that's tough, man. And I think I've always just been a sensitive bloke anyway. And I've got zero fucks in saying that these days. Like, I don't care what anyone thinks. But back then, I'll be honest, I was, it was like almost the echoing of the traditional masculinity values getting talked about by friends and the army stuff. And, it was just, I guess everyone's just trying to figure it out, but we're all have a wildly different sort of set of circumstances which sort of lay out. I just saw the toxicity in the space, not necessarily from people, but just it's just not how humans thrive. We're social creatures, right? We don't thrive off being around people we don't want to be around, working 12, 15 hours a day for 4 weeks at a time and only seeing our loved ones for a week. It's not something that is sustainable, and I didn't have a plan to get out. So I just pulled the pin. I didn't even have a transitional plan, and I just went all in. And I had a lot of fun doing it, I'll be honest.
You're like, see you never.
Pretty much. But I've gone back into those environments now in this capacity, and that's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, but which is great because you have seen the gaps now. You know what, people in those spaces can experience. You've literally been there firsthand. So being able to come back in such a different capacity, that's amazing. And being able to give back what they actually need and providing that mental health support, I just think is so important. Because even for our listeners, just before we actually started this conversation, we were just talking about how, there is a lot of suicides that do happen on mine sites. And I was expressing that, I knew someone personally who had committed suicide on a mine site. And there is just such a lack of emotional support for people on site. I mean, as you say, we are all social creatures. We need that connection. And so, what is it that you think, what should be changed in this area? I know I'm kind of going off script a little bit here, but not that I have a script, but
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
what do you think needs to be done to address these matters?
Well, I think, and this the good news is I've seen some of this stuff being done, but organizational culture and organizational psychology, like what makes a company a nurturing, supportive, um, environment for people to thrive is multifaceted, I think. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, and I'm a realist as well. Companies need to be profitable to be sustainable, so people can be employed. Without
Of
that,
course.
there is no jobs for other people. There is no company to work for because they, they fail, don't they? So I get that. And what is also true is I think, especially in the resource sector, which is the primary revenue raiser in all of Australia, is that there's both great opportunity, but there's also companies out there that have mixed attitudes towards how they treat their people. Some are very nurturing, some offer financial counseling and literacy, amazing wellbeing activities. They've got really great systems in place to identify. They've got confidential peer support networks, not just the EAP, but they all complement each other. And then they get people like myself, and there's amazing other people in the space up there that go live in camp and, counselors and stuff. And it's amazing. And then other places I've been, couldn't be more opposite. Very, very old school, and just shut up, do your job, leave your problems at the door, harden up, get on with it. Don't be a snowflake, otherwise get out of here. So there's another acronym, and it's fit in or fuck off. And that attitude, and I know that's real pointy as I talk about it, but that's the range. So there is so much that they can do, but the problem is it's not a tick and flick. It's a consistent effort that needs to be made and invested in, just like health and safety, just like getting all your equipment and consumables and PPE, your gloves and glasses and all the rest of it, that people need to be having talks, and they need to have networks with people that they can speak to in confidence. And some people lack that. Others have it great.
Yeah, and I completely can agree with that as well, because I have a lot of experience as a business development manager and other manager roles, and I have often found a huge clash with CEOs because we've had very different perspectives on this. So, me recognizing that each employee, we need to take that care for their emotional and mental well-being, and we need to make sure that we're communicating with them, every single week, and we know where people are at. If they're facing any challenges, what support do they need, whether it's personal or work, open to, still being an ear no matter what it is. Whereas a lot of the CEOs I worked with, were very much that attitude, don't bring your problems into work. I even had one guy say, you're being really soft on them. You're being soft. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was always butting heads.
At the end of the day, that's just like people, people see the world as they don't see it as it is, they see it as they are. And that's just a projection of that person's values, beliefs, their conditioning, their lived experiences. So it's like, you're soft. What I hear is, I wouldn't do what you're doing. This is the way I would do it. And that's all comes down to self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and all the shit we're going to talk about today.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's even that perception on, being vulnerable as well. It's like, that's considered weak. That's considered soft. So I totally agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So moving into the next question. So you were in the hospitality industry as a DJ for, I think it was about 15 years that you'd told me previously. So
12
to 15.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned briefly, I guess, already how that kind of led to your struggles with addiction. So what did that actually look like for you, and how did you move through that? Were you able to get some assistance through that, or how were you tackling that beast?
Yeah, I think really transparently, I wasn't even looking to get help. It was normalized, and I was normalizing it. Despite the deep down, it was like my heart was breaking for myself. It was screaming out for help. It was saying, it was almost like higher self Ben was talking to worldly Ben, saying, mate, you look into your heart. You know exactly who you really are, what you really want. What do you really care about? Is this what you really want? The answer is no. Yet I would just go, shh, like, push it to the side, because
Yeah.
the idea of having to tackle that and taking that supreme ownership was just more like terrifying, to be honest. And I was like, no, like many of us, all of us, I should say, it's not just about drugs or alcohol. Call it Netflix, call it pornography, gambling, too much chocolate. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is. The things that we seek outside of ourselves to feel whole or to self-soothe or to feel alive or whatever, like, excuse my language for mum and whoever else is out there, but how fucking human of us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
what a natural, normal thing to want to do, that when things feel fucked, that we want to do something to make them less
We want to
fucked.
feel better. Yeah.
Even if it's a short-term relief that provides, knowing that that is the very thing that's causing this cycle of dysfunction, we still do it because of the short-term relief it provides. And that's, not only was I doing that, but my identity was tied up into my peer circles. And I left the fly in, fly out, and it's like that jettisoned away. And I was like, okay, who am I now? And then it was, okay, I'm the DJ. I'm the one with all the crew and the friends. And even within those, it's very cliquey and very, very toxic. And it's like, well, who are you with? And, or if you play there, you can't play here. And it's just, I never vibed on any of it. So I was really internally, I was in a bit of a spiral from the start. Plus, if I could rewind back to when I was like 16, 17 years of age, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. It's a curvature in my spine. That's why I got this really funky curly chair. And I was playing competitive rugby league and I loved it. And then they said, no more contact sport. And I remember it was like the doctor went and just put out my flame on my, like a candle. And it was like, no more. And I just was like, okay, well, who am I now? Went to school, what am I going to be when I grow up type conversation. So it was this constant like trundling forward of trying to find roots and to know who I was. But like many, I just kept on morphing and changing. And I guess that's a part of life anyway.
That's a part of the process.
Sure. And also what is true is that the beginning of the end for me was the legal prescription of benzodiazepines and opiates to me because of my back pain. And it was like, this is pretty good because my pain will go away, or it'll dull or soften the edges. But I will quickly realize, Paris, that it wasn't just for the physical symptoms. I could use this for dulling and nullifying emotional pain. And I was like, ooh, got it. This is actually magic. It's medicine, but it's also drugs. It's also, it depends what my intent is of use, but it can be party time as well, and I can actually completely obliterate away any sort of ill or bad feelings, So I started to play Dr. Ben, and that was on top of all of the basic and very normalized drinking culture in Australia, binge drinking on the weekends. But that sort of went from just the weekend to self-employed, DJ, too much play, not enough structure and work ethic. And it was the beginning of the end, it really was.
Yeah. And I can completely relate to your story as well, in the sense that there's been so many people that I've spoken to as well who've developed an opioid addiction, and that stemmed from a physical injury that they've had, or a physical condition that they've had. And, recognizing what this powerful drug can do for you, not only physically, but for you mentally as well. People fall into that trap. And I mean, even when I've shared my story about how I first started drinking when I was 13, right? I was going through a lot of turbulent emotions within, and I just wanted a quiet voice. I just didn't want to be, feeling so up and down, left, right, and center, every single damn day. So as soon as I discovered those abilities that alcohol has to kind of numb everything down, everything feels really warm and fuzzy, like a hug. I was hooked. And yet, how human of me, as you say, to want to seek that relief, where we're all struggling with something, we're all going through it. Life is not easy. And to have these really accessible things that can give us that immediate relief, like particularly alcohol, it's legalized, right? And even your opioids, you were scripted those, you were allowed to have them. So, this is where we can get really stuck in a trap there. Alrighty, time to give a shout out to our amazing sponsor, Equine Assisted Wellbeing Institute, which was founded by Felicity Rideout. Felicity is all about teaching others to become equine assisted therapy practitioners, which is a powerful approach that uses horses to help people heal emotionally and mentally. Now, if you're someone who's passionate about horses and you want to make a career out of it, then listen up. They've just launched their Equine Assisted Therapy Practitioner Training and Certification course, which is now available online and accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. Even if you haven't studied in years or tech isn't your thing, this course is designed to be super easy to follow. You'll get interactive modules, live coaching, unlimited support, and even a business startup kit to help you hit the ground running. Complete the course in as little as 8 to 12 weeks, or you can take your time because you've got up to a year to finish. But the best part is you can snag 10% off by using the code PARIS10 at checkout. And if you'd rather study in person, they do have an option for that too, and they're based in the beautiful Swan Valley in Western Australia. If you're feeling the call, jump on this opportunity to turn your love for horses into a rewarding career. Head to their website, www.equineassistedwellbeinginstitute.com, and sign up today.
Mm. Yeah, it's very normalized. And when you look at the data around suicide and accidental overdose, your two main offenders are the class of benzodiazepines and alcohol, and especially mixed toxicity. So mixed toxicity is the largest taker of lives when you're talking substances. It's not them individually, although they are fatal, can be fatal. Anything, by the way, I learnt this a bit of a while ago. I don't even know where it came from, but anything in a small enough dose can be therapeutic. And I know this might reach people and they'll be like, not these ones. And I'm like, yes, these ones. Like these, let's use a quick example, fentanyl. Yeah. Most people recoil and they go, whoa, no, that's not okay. Never is fentanyl okay. Let me tell you when fentanyl's okay. What a soundbite, right? When my wife was in labor and we're at the hospital and I'm going through, these waves of feeling like I've got all this grounded power, like holding her, and then feeling just completely overwhelmed and lost to her screams and stuff. She looked at me and she said, Ben, I think I want the epidural. And it wasn't on the cards and it wasn't on the plan, but this is what happens in all pregnancies. They don't often go to plan. And so fast forward to her going from screams to having jokes with me, and I needed 10 minutes to resettle because she was just like, oh, I'm good now. And I'm like, yeah, all right. Okay, I'm not. Just give me a sec. And I went for a walk outside and sat down, had some breaths, called my mum, had a cry, came back in, and I was like, whew. And just playfully, I turned around the bag on the epidural and it said 0.000019 fentanyl. And I'm like, Anything in a small enough dose can be therapeutic. Anything in a large enough dose is fatal. So it's really about the intent of use. And you get these words thrown around like recreation and medicinal and all of that. Yet we don't demonize, say, opiates when it comes to life-saving surgeries and anesthesia and anesthetic. You try ripping a root canal out without a needle in there, or open heart surgery. You don't. You would not survive. Imagine the amputations back in the day without any painkillers. Bite on this rope. Do you know what I mean? So, but we demonize it when people are using it to tranquilize away emotional pain because of the absolute turmoil of their lives, and we judge them as bad and immoral and not contributing members of society. They ought to be locked up, throw away the key. It shits me to tears because, I've worked in some of the most challenging environments of the most highest density of people with addiction and mental health issues and all the rest. And all of those attitudes are completely opposite to the intention that people actually want, and that is for that not to be the problem anymore, those social issues to be eradicated. Yet we're leading it with judgment and belittling and dehumanizing people and wondering why they continue to continue to get sucked in the vicious cycle of addiction. It's you can tell where I come from on this, right? It's I'm super passionate, and I think it's the linchpin that is the answer to solving a lot of these issues starts with judgment.
I completely agree. And I actually was interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a lot on this and just how, I guess, what my opinion was on, reducing that judgment, and, how can we come together as a collective to be able to assist these vulnerable people, because they are vulnerable. This is why we fall into those traps. And so I was given an example, because I live quite far up north. My partner keeps getting mad at me for mentioning where we live, so I won't say exactly where. Somewhere up north. And it's very much like on the cusp of going like regional. And so there is a lot of addiction here, and there's also a lot of judgment. So I remember being on one of the Facebook groups, community Facebook groups, and there was a couple of people, really carrying on about how there's a lot of people who are struggling with particularly meth addiction here. And, they like to hang around the shops. I mean, there's not really many places for them to hang at anyway. So, they've only got a few choices. So they'll hang out at the shops, and, of course they're acting a little bit erratic. But I haven't seen anyone do anything harmful to someone else. They've kind of just been erratic on their own, and they've just been keeping to themselves. But of course it's scaring people. They're concerned, that they could harm them, and they just get very fearful, which I totally understand. I completely get that too. But the way that this lady was even talking about this on the group was very much like, can't even go to the shops without running into these damn crackies. Like, it was just so filled with judgment and hate. And I normally don't engage with this stuff. I normally can't be bothered. It's a waste of time and energy. But I was really kind of upset about it. And I was like, that's not really fair, because there were so many people responding, being like, yeah, fuck these guys. Like, let's just, kick them out of this place, blah, blah, blah. Really starting to form together and get very aggressive and angry. So I was like, I'm just gonna slide in here and say something real quick, and we'll see what happens. And so I just said, look, I think we should be looking at this from a perspective of, why is this person struggling with addiction? Do we have any support services around this area? No. Do we have any support groups here like NA or AA? No. What is the closest mental health or addiction treatment service to where we are? 30 minutes away. Well, that's not very good. Not a lot of these people even have cars to get there. Do we get any outreach here? No. So what do we do? Let's actually look at this as a community. They don't have the support here to even get better if they wanted to. So, let's just actually start asking those questions and seeing where we can actually help. And they pretty much told me to drop dead after that. But I basically, I was like, okay, I'm dealing with people that aren't ready to listen and they don't really care what I say. But I stood by my point. I was like, I feel like that's how we should be, addressing people that we see in the community who are battling addiction. Start asking the whys. Like, why are they going through this? How can I help? Is there support available to them? Let's just ask more questions.
Yeah, for sure. The answer is always no, because there's always not enough. And the big theme is about coexistence, about two things being able to coexist. And because, look, for example, I live in Belmont, not too far out of Perth CBD, and I've got a beautiful little park. There's a bird song in the mornings. I take my dog there, and every morning I pick up used fits and needles. I pick up baggies. I pick up the party of 3 of Jim Beam cans and stuff, and I just put on my gloves that are in my car, and I just put them into the bin. And some people look me up and down like, why are you even picking it up? And I'm like, because this is my neighborhood. But every time I pick up a used needle, I go, my heart breaks, because I go, I wonder what's the why. I wonder what's driving this person. Not just, perhaps they're functionally dependent. Maybe they're, there's so much psychological trauma there. I don't know how they were raised, the kinds of incidents they've been through, the lack, maybe the neglect, maybe the intravedo, like the kinds of body chemistry changes that have led them and had a greater propensity to lean towards functional use of like things like stimulants or sedatives and
yes.
And then another part of me goes, fuck, I wish I didn't have to pick this shit up in my neighborhood. I've got a little boy and I want him to come run around with his shoes off in here. But, so the thing is, there's always going to be this coexistence, I think, of us. We were capable of this. It's just hard. And that is to acknowledge and empathize. Empathy doesn't mean you have to agree. Doesn't mean you have to be aligned with.
Of course, yes.
Just means we can have deep empathy for someone's pain and what they're going through, and let's look pragmatically and practically to fight to make safer communities. And harsher sentences and all of that only increases the rate of recidivism, that repeat offending, because within 3 years, 87%, I think thereabouts, might get that a little wrong, but 87% of people with drug and violent crimes reoffend and then they're back in prison. So there's not a lot of rehabilitation programs, all the things you mentioned. So yeah, big on that.
Yeah, and I do agree in regards to, these two things kind of coexisting in the sense of having that empathy and then also not agreeing with it. I mean, that's very much how I live my life. I guess I just didn't really look at it as two separate things kind of coexisting at the same time. But yeah, I do that too. I just really try to come from a place where I can hold compassion and empathy and just, I want to pour love onto these people. I don't need to agree with what they're doing and their behaviors and, be okay with it. But I just want to share some love, give them some positivity back, because I know, as you said, we don't know what that person's going through. There's so many factors that lead to addiction as well. We have no idea what brought them there in the first place.
Agreed. Yeah.
So you mentioned having physical injuries, I think you had mentioned to me previously you had a neck injury as well, and you've got scoliosis. So how did these influence your reliance on opiates for pain management, which we briefly touched on, but let's go into that further.
Yeah, sure. I guess definitely the benzodiazepines were a functional benefit because they're a muscle relaxant, right? And the curvature in my spine. And in fact, if I can do two things at once, which I'm not too bad at, I'll try and keep talking. I'm just going to bring up a screenshot here and show everybody, because this is the shit I deal with every day. Wait, let me get it. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that is a thoracic curvature of 42 degrees of combined curve and 4 fusions in the vertebrae there. So that isn't how your back's meant to be. You don't bend the right way.
No, not at all.
Even just biomechanics of the body and moving around, and people say, "Oh, you're always complaining about your back," and I'm like, "Leave it." Because sometimes I can be bothered telling people, other times they're like, "Oh, well, go on, mate, don't be weak. Let's go heavier at the gym." And I'm like, "You don't understand. Leave it alone." But it's also formed limitations in myself, because I've been like, I can't because, But it's not always pain. Sometimes it's just discomfort, and I need to do things to look after my skeletal health, and I do that sometimes, and I don't. I find it difficult to sit for long periods. I need to move. I need to get tools, aids, all that. And on the topic of tools and aids, these medicines were just one of those things. But I wouldn't call them medicines, because I'm not putting on a tinfoil hat here, but you don't have to go too far back in history to look at the pharmaceutical companies' histories, to look at things like opiates and painkillers and benzodiazepines, and even current events, which I'm not making this political, but with vaccines and all the rest of it. There's so much there that to describe that even the very side effects that these create are often perhaps even by design, because they're not there to eradicate, people's pain, but only to subdue the symptoms. And that's what I think is so important in my journey, and I know for others I've spoken with, is to realize that these are just tools and aids. They're not the answer. They're not the fix of anything. They are just there to subdue symptoms so you can more effectively work on the other peripheral things, or the core stuff even underlying, that's driving this behavior in the first place, or the need for it rather. In my case, I can't straighten my back. No surgeon will touch it, because they said you've got too much function. Like if you were crippled in pain, we would be like, we'll have to break your back above and below the curvature. You'll have a rod in your back. You'll have all these limitations, and spinal health is going to degrade as you age, and it's going to be really hard. But because the body's a miraculous bio machine, it does what it does to compensate. And this is an analogy, I think, for my life, for how I deal with emotional pain, physical pain, any psychological stress, like whatever's going on, work, unexpected tragedies, all the rest of it. This scoliosis has been my greatest teacher and the biggest fucking pain in my ass as well. It's been the root of some of this stuff, but I can't say that all of my issues with drugs and alcohol came from the back. That would be a cop out, honestly, because there was a lot more than that. There was definitely the identity stuff, like the deep insecurity and lack of self awareness at times, but especially self-esteem as a bloke who was portraying putting the mask on to everyone in the hospitality space, in the fly and fly out space, even as a young kid. Like, I'm not talking about just my experience. I think this is everybody's trying to figure themselves out, figure out where they live in where they fit in the world. Because two things I think are true fundamentally: humans want to belong. Because think about back in the day when we were living in caves, the most tragic and terrible thing that could happen to you is exile. Right? You're no longer a part of us. That would be a death sentence. And it's still the truth today. If you're ostracized, your life looks different. Your likelihood of living a fulfilled life becomes more challenging. So there's that. And then there's also the who do you want to be versus what can you offer the world? What can you get paid for? What are you good at? All of these like different considerations. I speak to people that are 50, 60, and they've still got no bloody idea what they're doing. You know, they've changed career 4 times and all the rest of it. Like, we're all just big kids in these meat suits trying to figure out life, and we've got to enjoy this passage of time, you know, together. And this is why we've got to acknowledge and have a bit of reverence and respect for the deep insecurities that we have and the need to fit in and the coping strategies which we sometimes reach for. You know, how human of us, once again.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. And it's very, I can say it's quite relevant even to my own journey with addiction and, a lot of the feelings that I was having, all these core beliefs that I formed from a really young age. And, that was due mainly to my childhood environment and a lot of things that happened to me externally. That was quite traumatizing. And so I started forming these core beliefs, which we all do. We're so moldable at such a young age, particularly between, 0 and 7. That is really the prime time to develop those core beliefs. And that's what drives us forward as adults, and in our adult behaviors. So I was very lost, didn't know who I was. I did not have a strong identity of self. I really believed that I didn't deserve to be happy, that I wasn't lovable, that I was unworthy. And to be feeling all of that, like at such a young age and so consistently, like of course you're going to want to get a breather from it, and life can just be so difficult for so many. So yeah, it's again, very human of us. It's a common theme in this.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I've come to realize in the thousands of people I've crossed paths with and have the privilege of them sharing stuff with me has been, it doesn't matter if you're incredibly affluent, you've got everything that someone might think will make you happy, you're still susceptible to all that stuff. Or you're the complete opposite end in complete lack of resources and safety and all the rest of it. Yet here's something that sort of spins me out sometimes, is the fact that some people that have very little, but they have each other, have a deep sense of connection and community, where in the Western world, you've got technology, we're living on top of each other, and we're lonely, isolated, and disconnected. So you do the math.
Yes.
It doesn't make logical sense. No, it just doesn't. So, so no one is immune to being on the pointy end of experience. It's not all, beauty and rainbows and fulfillment and love and connection. In fact, I think if we can normalize the fact that not just it's okay not to be okay, and I know that's absolutely very true, but it's okay to celebrate yourself when you're fucking having a win, and it's also okay to say I'm broken down and open right now, and I need so much help. I'm lost, and that's okay.
Yeah, and just being comfortable and to have a safe space to go to as well. I think that's really detrimental as well for people to be able to open up and to share, is having that safe space, which you help a lot of people create, particularly in the workforce as well, which is amazing. And we'll get more into that soon. But going back to your experience with opioids, how did you go like detoxing from those? What did you do to kind of come out of that?
Yeah. So, and what's really important here for me, in the manner of full authenticity, is to say that wasn't just my problem. That was one of the problems. And, in our brief chats leading up to this, it wasn't intentionally, restrictive in what I was sharing, but it wasn't just that. It was just everything. It was the behaviors. It was the going to excess for the sake of it, just to be seen or to be the clown or to outdo the boys, and just being just sucked into that culture. But also, like I said earlier, having a lot of fun doing it. So two things can be true. Again, this coexistence could be having a great time, but deep down, that inner knowing was that, Ben, like, this is not truly what you want. So it was recreational drugs too, MDMA and other stimulants, all fueled with alcohol, and then prescription medication as well. So, and cannabis. So, it was a toxic swirl of all of this stuff, which is not what the brain wants or needs. It's actually, I consider myself and many, many others I've spoken to that have very honestly had it much, much more difficult and much greater levels of toxicity. And I just think about this amazing vessel I'm in. It's just kept on keeping on despite the absolute torture and amusement park style behavior that's sort of gone in and through it, and it's still kept on just adapting. But the detox, I'll tell you, it was a combination of things at the time. But this ties into that identity conversation, because for me, I know that I definitely would have benefited from some withdrawal help, some management of that under the guise of a medical professional, or at the very least, someone who knew the risks associated with going cold turkey, because I did what many people may do who lose their lives, is that I basically just shut the door in at home and just rid it out myself. And that was some of the most brutal, difficult, and rock bottom moments I've ever felt. But this is what drove it. I said, I deserve this. I deserve to hurt right now. You did this to yourself. Have a look at you. Like, this pain you brought onto yourself. You deserve to feel it, and feel it deeply. So there's a bit of a tragic beauty in there, in that it was almost this resignation and surrender. But at the same time, it was, in a very pragmatic way, or like a practical look in, incredibly dangerous. So, all of the terrible, like, withdrawal symptoms but I think physically, it was something that my body handled okay. But psychologically, mentally, I'd already struggled with bouts of depression throughout my life. I've had a couple of panic attacks as well, some of them in private, one very public one as well, at the convention centre in Perth. And, all of these moments, I didn't even rate a mention compared to the depths of despair that I felt in with that. And I actually really just succumbed to people as well. A large part was succumbing to people's judgments of saying, God, Ben, you're better than this. Like, how could you have fallen so far? And, oh, mate, you used to be here and now you're here. And bless their souls, because I know that what they're really trying to say is, I wish better for you.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I know you've got what you need, because you're this, you're that, you're a smart, gifted young bloke, you're a good friend, you're likable, you got a head on your shoulders, all of that. But addiction doesn't care about that stuff. Mental illness doesn't care about that stuff. If you want to make it an avatar or an identity, which it isn't either. It's just this. It's more of, I consider my drug and alcohol use and my behaviors as just adaptations to emotions driving the show, which again comes from that, actually a conscious shutting off to the very real, powerful voice of the intuition in my heart saying, no, you don't want this. And I was like, so I guess it was almost like the trial by fire, by combat, to go head on into it. And it's like, well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see what happens, which I realized later on is suicidal behavior. And even during my use, to not consider rather the impact of the mixed toxicity, knowing, well, I knew it, but I didn't consider it, because intentionally I just, just let it all unfold as it unfolded. And I was just like, well, if I wake up, I'll wake up. and that again, even as I talk about now, my heart breaks for Ben a time ago, but I'm really proud of myself that slingshotting out of that, I realized the immense power and need for me to engage in professional help. And all the stigma around that just fell away once I found, and I was very lucky because I found I had an immediate connection with an alcohol and other drug counselor.
Good.
Through Serenian House. That was the organization, which was free, by the way. I did like 60 hours of that and it cost me zero. So for anyone out there who's like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to overcome this, look, if you've got a car, or even if you don't, just get there somehow. Take some extra time, get a mate, ask for a favor, jump on public transport, get a bike off Gumtree for $20 and ride from the nearest station. I don't know. But to go there and talk about, yes, what your week looked like and the urges, the struggles, but also we went way deeper than that. We went into my childhood. We celebrated the things for me that ought to be celebrated, that I'm very harsh on myself, very self-critical and all of that. And she helped me release a lot of that and really step into my true power and realize that, and it all came from a deep empathy for myself, first and foremost, to heal from the inside out, was to first cultivate acceptance over all of what's happened and why. Not you're a piece of shit, Ben, for making these terrible choices and look where it led you, because none of that's helpful. It's all spiky and creates just this deep ick inside us. So instead, and I did that forever. So instead of that, I could finally observe it and just say, and just put it down. And I'm not saying I'm healed. I don't like when people say it's just all behind me, because I still have impulse control issues. I still go when I'm feeling the pinch of stress, sleep deprivation, new father, all that. Even a couple of times I've caught myself, say, pouring alcohol. And I didn't even choose that. I didn't even want it for myself. It was almost and that's all of those deep pathways that get so strengthened habitually through use, because of the immediate relief it provides. So, and then I found myself pouring it down the sink or having it and being filled with those familiar feelings of shame and guilt again. And I'm like, here we go. We're still here. Don't think that like you're just like you've evolved. You're better than that. I have a deep humility about the reality of what it is like to live with having had those kinds of just powerful tendrils and tentacles pulling me into what felt like an abyss. Even though others would look in and say, you're doing this to yourself. So,
and I
wrestle at times,
Yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of you for even, the journey that you've been on and where you are today and everything that you're giving back into the community. I think it's amazing. And, even what you were saying before about how, you were going through these really intense withdrawals and you had that very much like you deserve this and, you're going to really feel this. And, it kind of even reminded me of times where I've even judged myself so harshly and being cruel to myself. But it really comes from, just really needing to gain that self-love and acceptance for yourself and recognizing, as you say, that, you were doing the best that you could with the knowledge that you had at the time as well, and taking complete acceptance in that and knowing that it's okay that this happened, but I want more, I want better, and let's move on from this. So I think there's so many lessons just tied into that whole experience as well that has now set you up for life. And of course, like we're always working on ourselves. Like there's, I'm not perfect either. Like I didn't even start this podcast for so long. Like I had this idea for like a good 2 years before I actually launched it, right? And it was all because it's all because I'm still lapsing at the time, and I had a business coach, and I just kept saying to her, I was like, I don't want to be this like imposter, like, coming up here, like, who do I think I am? Like, trying to tell other people, what they should do with their lives when I'm still fucking up like all the time. Like this is, how am I meant to be the leader? And she was like, Paris, you're exactly who people need to hear from, because everyone is fucking up. Like, no one is perfect. No one wants perfect. Like we're all human. So just like people people want to hear that. Like, get out there, just do it and just own it. Like, step into these mistakes and recognize that, okay, they're going to happen, but like, what are you going to do moving forward from that? Like, what's the next step? And yeah, that actually really helped me shift that mindset a lot. I was like, okay, like, yeah, I don't need to be perfect to still show up for other people. Like, you know, we're never going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting with the imposter syndrome thing you mentioned. And just for anyone who's heard that word or uses that word, I just want you to consider this, is that we come up with these labels and pop psychology terms and we tweak language and then it adapts culturally to mean something else like woke or mental or psycho. They carry, we call it stigma, but it's really the cultural adaptation to this language and how it's been used for so long that it forms this new meaning. And when I hear imposter syndrome, narcissist, and all this, like, again, two things can be true. Yes, that helps us understand certain qualities, certain behaviors, certain makeups of stuff. And we love to make sense of stuff, right? We love
we like to box it.
Yeah, and because now I get it, and it's neatly in a box. So, and they're the villain. They're the villain in the story, might I add. That narcissist, that prick who I was with, or that bitch, and and it's easy to other people. What's much harder is to, and for ourselves as well, I believe, is to actually have deep empathy to see what else is going on under the surface for them and for you to feel that can't coexist. Because how's this, right? Really, where it's coming from is a place of unmet needs. It's an emotional pain. It's a burden. It's a darkness that we're holding on to that they caused us validly, 100%, not taking away from that. And what's also true is, holding on to that's only going to poison you, not them. To someone else might feel like you've wiped your hands of it, just like the imposter syndrome. I can't do this because, well, that's actually just a way to blame something else. And I know this sounds really rough coming out, right? But to blame it on something else and create a reason why I can't do the thing. And it's like, no, you can do anything you fucking put your mind to. You really can. But the most natural thing of all is you're rewiring your brain. You're laying new pathways down. You're breaking new ground. You're evolving. You're in your discomfort, right? All of that stuff. If I do something like a mental health first aid course, and I don't do this, but I could literally run on autopilot and I wouldn't have to think because of the repetition and the passions there and all of that. But I went and spoke in front of about 100 people yesterday and I had all those familiar feelings like, oh, shit, you better not stuff this up, Ben. You think you can do this? What gives you the right to do this? Is your story powerful?
Yes.
So it's natural because the amygdala is firing off going fight, flight or freeze. Like, what's a potential scapegoat to get out of this thing? Because we're really feeling anxious right now. Don't you agree, Ben? It's like Ben talking to Ben. And I'm like, shh. Like, that's not helpful.
Yes,
so, sure, I want to do this. And the reason why I'm anxious, the reason why I'm doubting myself is because I want to do well here. So I'm not saying mindset's everything, but a powerful reframe in the moment with self-sabotage or imposter syndrome is to pause and take a bird's eye view and go, what's really going on here? Because our mind likes to play tricks, I reckon. And it gets me in trouble all the time. All this thinking, move out of here into here, move into here and go, what do I feel? Oh, I feel like this is for me and this is my time and I deserve to have a voice. Paris embodies empathy. She's the woman who's going to take shtsfcked to the next level. Like, this is like the dialogue, which is more helpful to ourselves, right?
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. Like my coach, like she just gave me such a kick up the ass, like when she said this to me and I was like, well, yeah, like, okay, like maybe I need to be thinking about this a little bit differently, and reframing, my current thought patterns. But yeah, at the time, like, I guess because I was still going through addiction, I wouldn't say I had full capacity to be able to always pull myself back and be able to look at it. So it was really actually helpful to have someone there alongside me to be able to pull me up in those moments and help me recognize those things. Because I didn't always have the capability at that time. Now I'm getting better. Again, don't always get it right though.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I should just add to that very finally is that, yes, of course, depending on your emotional resources, where you're at, because some things you've really got to tighten it down. We don't have that self-awareness yet, whatever. So yeah, it's a really good point. Just to not to backtrack on what I said, I think it's 100% true in my perspective.
Yeah.
But also, it really depends on a variety of factors being sort of at the right time and place to be able to do that kind of that shift. But inevitably, I think that if there are things in the middle of that, then there's the work. There inherently lies the work. To get to build towards a place to then even begin that work. And well, like you described, which is a never-ending fuckery of this spiral of life, upward, hopefully, sometimes down. But that's being human. That's what it looks like. It's not. It's messy and beautiful and all of that.
Yeah, it is. And it's just, we learn so much. We learn so much over the time, and it all comes through experience, and we just have to give ourselves grace. I think that's the main thing as well. Just be patient. Just do the best that you can, and you'll be fine. And look for that support, having that extra support. So like for myself, having someone there who was able to pull me up when I couldn't recognize something for myself, that was a game changer. So having that support there as well, I think is really, really, really vital.
Yeah, 100%.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, how your personal experiences, like with addiction and mental health, informed the development, like, of the programs and the services offered by Beyond All Bounds. Sorry. Could you go into a little bit more about, what it is that you guys are doing and how you kind of how that came to fruition?
Yeah, beautiful. No worries. My interest is I've always been this avid self-paced learner. So while I don't have a traditional roots or I guess a history of traditional academia with university and stuff, I've done a couple of Cert 4s and the rest of it. But realistically, what I've learned the most from is lived experiences, and not just what I've been through, but really having the time, patience, and support and awareness through other learnings, peripheral stuff like short courses, teachers that I admire, doing their programs, doing their mentorship, doing one-on-one stuff, doing counseling, seeing a psychologist, which I just started seeing a new psychologist recently, not because I'm struggling, because I want to take all of this information and bits that I've learned along the way, and I want to kind of pull it into organize it and make it more accessible for me and to breathe more self-belief into my experience. But it's been lived experiences and these other more hand-picked and selected educational bits. And I'll be honest, a big part of the fact that I haven't got any of these, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor yet. Not hopefully, in the future that will become reality. But I am a coach and a mentor, yet I've got hang-ups about that too, because there's a lot of charlatans out there who have done a week course or it doesn't matter how long. But the intent behind it it feels gross. So I don't even like all of these labels. But what I've come to realize is the tip of the spear for Beyond All Bounds is lived experience facilitation, but it's not just the experiences. It's taking lived experiences from just the things that have happened to the deep integrative work to turn it into lived wisdom. Lived wisdom versus lived experience, in my perspective, is really about understanding that to a deep level and wrapping it up in loving awareness and also emotional safety when trying to offer advice, air quotes. And I don't even like the word, right? I would more say I would encourage people to consider new perspectives, information, and that's what we do. We facilitate powerful discussions, create safe spaces for people to express themselves authentically, because that is the medicine for most people, because we've all got stuff to bury deep down which hasn't seen the light of the day. And if that could be brought to the surface and brought to light and be deeply empathize with and be wrapped in compassion, those experiences can go from things that are like tethers that pull us backwards whenever they pop up as triggers to here that thing goes again, but I know that this is actually my strength and power, and I can actually utilize this to become the blueprint for others who have perhaps navigating the same issues I was. So that's really So it's lived experience. And I'll be honest, I've received some, I wouldn't say lots, but some really serious judgments from people in academia, because they're like, oh, it's not safe, and you haven't done this and you haven't done that. I'm like, interesting. Coming from like a psychologist, or when your name's on the building and all that, for you to miss the mark with something so simple as projecting your insecurities, your biases, your judgments onto me when you don't know who I am. If they really asked, I would say, you don't get me, because the tip of the spear for me is emotional safety with everything I try to do. So it's their needs that I'm always tapped into and conscious, not just here's my story, make people cry and leave them wobbly walking out, even if powerful. And I've seen speakers do it, and I'm not judging people. Everyone's on their journey. But that's not where Beyond All Bounds has placed its energy and efforts. It's been myself and then this beautiful family team, I suppose, but a family that's evolved. We've really grown slow, and I love that, because we're self-made, have plenty of offers to come and do stuff with other people and pull me away from this logo, and it's like, not interested. Always wanted to be my own person. And now with my beautiful wife, who's co-director, co-founder with me, it's life by design. Even though we still got a long way to go, it's beautiful. So it's education, facilitation, training, and I started with mental health first aid accredited training, which I realised I didn't have to go to uni for. So again, a lot of self-doubt, but I dived into the program, put all of my eggs in one basket. And I feel on a personal level, as far as growth is concerned, I knocked it out of the park, because I, for the first time, felt like this could be a part of a stepping stone and something that really breathes some structure into my life, and is a vehicle for me to begin to create a livelihood. I can share my story in a safe way, and it's a basic literacy course, that encourages people to more skillfully support people in their life, which is what I live and breathe, from inside out. So that's where it started, and now we've evolved to men's groups and circles, therapeutic practices and stuff with our team. And also, like I said, I'll be becoming a counsellor, specifically focusing on a few different modalities. For anyone who's interested, Gabor Mate may be familiar with his work. Compassionate inquiry is something I really want to dive into as a practitioner, and also a beautiful bloke who's changed my life in many ways. His name's James Fishgill. You can find him on IG, and he talks all about conscious communication, repairing rupture and relationship issues, or the way we relate to one another. And that's where that coexistence and mutuality and leading conflicts instead of judgment and aggression, but to deeply empathize and seek to, and this takes immense courage, to see their perspective, lead with that and say, I can see why this is so hard for you. And based on, say, what I've done, I can see why that's left you so hurt. And what's also true is my intent wasn't to hurt you at all. It was, my best intentions were actually to prove to you, maybe this family, I'm just riffing, that I'm a hard worker and I'm trying to create a livelihood for ourselves. Say if the issue was you're not here enough, or you're not present for me or our kids. So I see the human conundrum constantly, the root of all conflict. So James's approach, called conscious relating or come back to love, is what I'm going to do is in a coaching sense as well, which is really backing me to become a practitioner, which I'm really proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And, congrats. I'm excited to see you go on this journey. This is going to be amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of that about Beyond All Bounds. I actually wanted to ask, because I'm aware of the time, we kind of, we went a little over time, but that's okay. We're having some good chats. But I wanted to get more of an insight into your mental health first aid courses. So like what do they look like, and what impact has those courses had on workplaces and communities?
Sure. Important to recognize, firstly, mental health first aid is not my course. It's not Beyond All Bounds course. I'm just an accredited instructor to deliver their framework.
And there's
many, many, many instructors in Australia. Proud to say that, our reputation really does precede us, especially in Western Australia. Why? Because we give it our all. Myself, Jordan, Haley, 3 lived experience instructors, which really take a lot of ourselves into that room and again, this is not a brag. It's not anything like this. This is who we are. High level of emotional and social intelligence. That's what attracted those two people toward Beyond All Bounds and to me, because it's the ability to read a room, understand that you're delivering to a whole room, but being able to cater to individual needs while speaking to a whole group. The framework's amazing. Framework's great. Suicide prevention, an acronym to follow, a bunch of other stuff. But where the point of difference is, I believe, with Beyond All Bounds is it's a heart-led, focus, and it's weaving in this tapestry of lived experiences and sharing perspectives. And I'll be very honest, I kind of flirt with the edges of the program of what I'm meant to do as an instructor, because the real power isn't just from the literacy they learn from the outcomes of the course content. It's the ability to have a safe space to share authentically, because that's where the real outcome. Yeah, and you can jump on Google, jump on Facebook, Beyond All Bounds, you'll see the logo. Like, have a look. Like, see what people are saying. Like, it's social proof is everything, and it's not lost on me. So our marketing, or when I say mine, for me, is to really deliver our service in a way that leaves people with a lasting impact. And that is not just about the course content. And that's really what birthed our livelihoods, because we were able to work with organizations. And the reason why, people often ask me, why don't you work in communities more? And I do, but it's much more difficult to find people primed to do a 12-hour course with 2 days in succession about basic mental health literacy and personal empowerment. I tell you what's easier, get them while they're at work, when work's paying for it. Because I guarantee you, probably in the four figures of people, 1,000 plus, didn't want to be in that room necessarily, but after even as quick as the first hour, they were like, this might be actually beneficial. And by the end, people who are real sort of, hard blokes that are toughened by the Pilbara sun have like, mate, that was really impactful for me. Thank you. It made me reflect on a lot of stuff, and makes me want to be better. And I'm just like, well, that ain't nothing to do with the course outcomes. That's to do with his deep introspection about his lived experiences, of which I honor deeply, and I like, you've probably heard this before. I say, your story fucking matters. You matter. Your the emotions and all. There's no negative and positive. It's just perhaps unpleasant or unhelpful sometimes, but it's not negative. We just like to label it negative, so we can push it away and be like, don't want that one. It's like, no, there's immense wisdom in all of the hard stuff and all the losses, and
we need them. Yeah,
that's what gives you the context to understand what bliss and euphoria and love and expansiveness feels like, is to feel depths and despair and constriction and loss and grief and bereavement. It's like, that's the human experience. That constant pursuit of happiness and health and wellness, that's what makes people sick, I reckon, in large part.
Agreed.
But yeah, that's mental health first aid. If you want to do a course, hit us up, beyondallbounds.com.au. Yeah.
I will share everything with our listeners.
Yeah.
I wanted to also quickly ask. I was going to ask about that. So I know you're focusing on men's circles as well. Can you walk us through a little bit about what you're doing there, like how often you're doing them? Are they hybrid? Are they in person? Where are you doing them?
Yeah, so again, full transparency, as you know, it's the 1st of August now. Very honestly, as a new dad, I wouldn't say I've dropped the ball with that, but competing priorities have really had me needing to. I'm much more time poor, and it's not just a timing thing. It's also been, my own stuff I need to keep evolving through as well. So we ran that for quite a while, and then more recently, I've sort of just eased off on it, and there's been a couple of months where I haven't done that because I've been revamping the website, really sort of reconsolidating Beyond All Bounds. With a new digital presence and all that's coming very soon, which we're really excited about.
Exciting.
Shouldn't be far. And I know the same thing with your website, long awaited. There's going to be new changes. All of these things, right, I've had to just, the word you used before was about being gracious and having grace. And I think I've fallen victim to throwing all the things in the basket, and I need to be everything to everyone. I need to create content. I need to be facilitating, I need to work on the business, need to be a present dad, need to be a loving husband, need to be a good mate. And it's like, the reality is that I've really dipped in emotional resources at times. So I've acknowledged that, and I'm just sort of, it's not like I push eject on the thing. Beyond All Bounds sat there like yours, dormant for a couple of years until it became what it would become. And then it evolved bigger than I thought it was ever intended to be. And now it's like, well, what do you want it to look like, Ben? You know, and I speak to my wife, Serene, and I said, what do we want this to feel and look like? And we've sort of landed on the fact that we want people to, we want to know all our team, we want to know their kids, we want to know their dogs' names, all the rest of it. And if we're growing any bigger than that, then we're not interested. We want to keep it boutique. We want to keep it powerful and, and really maintain the sacredness of like what we've created here. Something that, I'm really proud of. Yeah.
That's incredible, Ben. Thank you for sharing. Now I'll just ask 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. I hope is your back okay? You've been sitting there for a while.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Just checking in. So for anyone who might be interested in doing work with you, whether that's the mental health aid or workshops, as you mentioned, or any other services that you have available, like what do you have on offer at the moment and what is the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so beyondallbounds.com.au, if you click on that, it probably won't reflect where we're at currently because, like I said, the website's about to be relaunched. So the best thing to do, because it basically just reflects our centralised focus around mental health first aid accredited training, which was developed 5 years ago, that website. So it doesn't capture our growth in that time. So the best thing to do, you can check that out. It's just a bit dated, sadly. And I was almost going to say, I won't do the podcast until it's all done, but I wanted to just move things forward. And I really wanted to talk to you today. I would recommend people connect with us on the. Thanks. Yeah. I mean it. On the socials, just look out for the Impact logo, Beyond All Bounds on anything, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. TikTok, if you want to see me suffer in an ice bath most days. Also that's just something separate. But just to connect like that, and the men's groups are called For the Fellas, and that will be relaunching very, very soon. So I would recommend people just register their interest, and then when it's time to hit go, we'll have this beautiful sort of vehicle for people to fellas to just jump straight into. But socials, we do reflect sort of in our link tree at the very top, like the link in the Instagram, how to book in a course, some further podcasts with me if you want to learn a bit more. I manage the socials, so if you want to have a yarn, talk, reach out. I will be offering coaching around the things I've discussed, so conscious relationship stuff. Not just relationship, conscious relating. So like conflicts at work or with your mates or whatever, helping coach people through that stuff will be offered. We've also got a professional counsellor as a part of Beyond All Bounds, Kim Bannister. She's beautiful. She's really deeply empathetic, and I know she's going to create a lot of healing for a lot of people. Also, other members of the team have their own offerings. So all of that, just catch up with the socials. And, if you want to book into a mental health first aid course, we run multiple of those every month. That's still a core service of ours and will be into the future. I mean it, just do it. If you've done physical first aid, you know the importance of CPR and what that could mean. It could change or save someone's life in a moment. Same thing with suicide prevention training. To know how to ask and frame and do a really solid trust, safety and comfort sort of building up to asking this potentially destabilizing, potentially life-saving question. I would go as far as to say that when someone asked me, are you thinking of killing yourself? Are you thinking of suicide? That it was the greatest gift I've ever been given, because it allowed me to really assess that, shit, is the charade over? Because I feel like I want it to be in this moment. And, it's the vehicle that allows people to just drop all of the defenses and barriers, and you could literally save people's lives. And I've heard this feedback. Multiple people have said this from doing the course. I've transformed my relationships, which is not the outcome of the course, but they've translated the learning into their relationships. I've reconnected with my kids, as I mentioned earlier. Makes me want to be a better person. I know I've got mates who I felt out of my depth with talking to, and now I'm going to courageously approach those convos. or Ben, I just saved someone's life at work. It's down to you. And I said, no, it's not me. It was you. You know, I created the space. You opened to yourself to the learning, your heart and mind open, and you took in this. You drunk in the wisdom, and you used it in your own way. This is your win, not mine. But I tell you what, I'll take it as well. You know, I'm like, yeah, like it's all worth it. If I could hang up the professional world right now. Not that I would do that with Beyond All Bounds at all. It's our baby. It's our passion, but we could easily put it to rest and know that we've saved lives. And what's that worth? You can't put a number on it.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible because there's so many, you know, so many life skills there as well. It sounds like people are gaining out of these mental health first aid courses because, you know, obviously there's the intent behind the content, but there's so much more other knowledge and wisdom, as you say, tied in with it that then people can self-reflect. They can take those tools and implement it in other ways in their lives. And I just think that's fantastic. I love what you're doing, Ben, and I can't wait to see what more you get up to in the future. I'm definitely going to be keeping a close eye on you, Ben.
Right. Yeah, I want to do more public speaking, more talks, something that, you know, I love a yarn, more podcasts, conversations, long format stuff, like just going deeper into my own experiences and offer that as potential, you know, wisdom or a pathway for someone else to go, yeah, maybe, you know, I ought to do something, or, you know, I guess it's an ever of unfurling sort of situation, and what a beautiful place for it to be, right? Not in a mindset of scarcity, like I've got to do this and I need to go to uni, otherwise people won't take me seriously. I've given up giving a shit about that. And I've realized that people respond to authenticity. They respond to people feeling comfortable in their own skin. But I get it. I get all the hang-ups and the things that stop that. And what is also true, and what is also true is that that's what people are soaking in right now. And that's, you see this through podcasts. You see it through, you know, people's authentic self-expression. It does leave you to be exposed to get, you know, sort of a lashing in the threaded comments section of any post. But threaded comments are the devil, honestly. Like before that, social media was a different thing, you know.
I love them. Yeah. I love them because I get to watch some real good tangents on on some of my posts. And look, I'll remove the ones that are harmful that I think are, you know, this could actually harm people who may be experiencing challenges with mental health or addiction. I'll remove those ones. But if it's people's just general opinions on things and I completely disagree with them, and then other people will jump onto it and will disagree as well, and then they get into a bit of a tiff there, I'm like, I love the freedom of speech. Like, good on you guys.
Yeah, no one ever though said, "Hey, thanks for that." Like cruel vitriol you just spewed onto me. You've made me really rethink my position on this social issue. In fact, it's been very enlightening. I just want to thank you for that because my opinion's been changed forever based on what you've just lashed me with. It's like, of course not. It's ridiculous. Like it's literally just you know, on a serious note, it's just causing all this conflict and division on any social issue, world conflicts, you name it. It's a megaphone and amplification of all of the very narrow sort of opinions of a much smaller group compared to the general populace. And I just always tell people, just like you might be considered about what you're putting into your body on the topic of addiction and diet and food and hydration, you're consuming every time you pick up this silly little black mirror. And it's a tool and it's an aid. It's amazing. It's an encyclopedia, you know, at your fingertips, an encyclopedia, but at the same time, it can be harmful, and you know you got to watch what you consume.
Totally agree, and that is something that I'm going through. So I've got a pro bono client at the moment who's testing out my addiction treatment services and mental wellbeing services that I'm launching in a couple of months. So this is actually the first time I'm even mentioning it on here, but that's a really I know, it's scary. That's one of the first things I've been going through with this pro bono client is, you know, he's particularly recovering from a meth addiction. And I always say to him, you know, you got to be really mindful what you have on your social media because so many different things can also trigger you to use. As well as, you know, having those contacts who could be enablers and things like that, but also just being very aware of the power of our subconscious mind and how much information that we consume on a daily basis and how that really actually does impact us on a daily basis. So I was like, really cull through everything, like really look at who you want to be following, follow people that inspire you, that, drive you and motivate you, and, follow people that you would like to be, that you could picture yourself being at some point, something that you vision, follow all these people, keep flooding your mind with it, because the power of that is insane and people don't realize it. So that's one of the first things I got him to do before we even started diving into his addiction work.
Yeah, so true. Like, yeah, I would say if it doesn't contribute, build you up, add to you, inspire you, motivate you, open your heart, create a bit of ease. And by the way, side note, I understand we need to be informed and all of that, but for the pointy end of the stuff, like the stuff that causes friction, like I had to cut myself from let's say limit my viewing of the world conflicts going on because my heart was breaking.
I did the same.
And I feel this turning over of guilt inside me, like you've got to watch because you can't ignore that. But also we need to be very conscious.
Same.
It can be destabilizing though. So if it's not all those things I just mentioned, unfollow, unfriend, snooze for 30 days, block, do whatever you need to do. Like, I've got, I don't know about you, but I've got some friends that they've just, maybe they've deleted, maybe they've deactivated, but they've just cut away at least a couple of social platforms, and they're just like, Ben, I'm just outside more, smelling the roses, putting my feet on the ground, diving in the ocean, and I haven't felt happier. So just a gentle reminder to everyone to try and encourage yourself to be a bit more conscious about what you consume and tap into all of that the simplicity and the beauty of everything that's around you, because that portal of doom scrolling sometimes ain't always helpful. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to wrap it up, for those currently experiencing addiction or mental health issues, what advice, or I know you don't like that word, or words of encouragement would you offer?
Yeah. No, the word advice is okay with me. It's for this kind of thing when I'm talking non-specifically to and in a broader context. It's just individual. I think we've got to be careful when offering advice. It's always paved with good intentions. I just think unless you're really conscious and being very skillful about how you're doing that, it can often be harmful, even despite your best efforts.
Absolutely.
So I would say, and that there's a takeaway there for some, I'm sure, but I would say take a breath every day, every moment if you need to. And like, this is a little thing that works for me. It doesn't matter what it doesn't even really matter what I'm talking about here, about what topic. But if you're feeling friction or you're feeling this repetition or this bump or this, this pull into something that you really don't want for yourself, or an outcome you don't want, or discomfort or pain or whatever, it all really comes back to the breath, doesn't it? It's like it's at the very center of your conscious world experience is your breath, and it runs on autopilot. But I would say connect with your breath, stop, and I was going to say think, but don't think. I want you to feel, like try and move out of the head into the heart. And I know this might sound a bit gushy for some, but I couldn't care less. Heart-led decisions, listening to that heart brain or that gut brain, that intuition, that the inner knowing about what feels like is best for you, even if you feel like it's unavailable to you. I promise you it's not. With the right help, support, and deep empathy towards yourself, first and foremost, anything you want to release, whether it's emotions or guilt and shame or a particular, thing that's holding you back, the addiction, the functional dependency you might be in, the psychological dependency, like I need that thing to be okay. Like there are alternatives. They do take hard work though, and I can't sugarcoat it. And I'm not a poster boy for a good example of this necessarily, but consistent applied effort in all areas of your life that you want to shift and move to a more fulfilling, more sort of positively engulfing space in your life it really is up to you. I know the barriers, I know the difficulties, and I've been there. I've stared down what's felt like the blinkers on all the way to like a telescope, which on the other end, all I could focus on was my pain. And I get it, but it is part of the human experience. And wherever you're at right now it's not only okay, it's actually exactly where you're meant to be. Because even in the depths of despair, there is powerful transformational medicine there for you. And it might not feel like that. You might feel helpless, hopeless, whether it's you or someone you're supporting. I've seen people feel like their loved ones just slipping through their fingers. Some take their lives and others don't. Others make full recoveries. Others become estranged. But nonetheless, if you can cultivate deep empathy for yourself and others, I think that's really the linchpin that holds all of this together. And then it's that mindful action every day and that awareness and coming back to the breath and consistently thinking, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? And what do I bloody need to get it done? Not just achieving and task-driven stuff. I mean, like, what do I need? Do I need to break down? Let's find a safe space. Do I need support? Let's find the right kind of mentorship that's going to be done in a safe way. Do I need to jettison and cut away my friendship circles, even though I'll have to grieve deeply for that loss? Do you have to come back to that centerpiece of, is this helpful for me? Is this what I want my life to feel and look like? I'm here for you, whoever you are. I'm an ear. You can drop me a DM, share your experience. I'll get back to you when I can. I'm also very conscious of my emotional resources, but if I'm not the right fit, which I won't be for many, and you won't be, this podcast won't be for many, they'll find their solace other ways. But there's the right fit for the right person at the right time. And I always say this in all our courses. It might not feel that way, and there might be all the evidence to think that, no, it just isn't, it's bullshit. It's not going to happen for me, Ben. And it can, and it will. Just hope is the commodity that costs nothing, that can change everything. So hope, faith, whatever you want to wrap it up as, but maybe a higher power, I don't know. But please, hopefully you take something from those words just now.
Oh, thank you so much, Ben. That was beautifully said. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really, really loved having you on. I mean, we had a solid yarn. I skipped many questions.
But
it was good. It was so good. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll chat to you soon.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll stay up on touch with that. Anyone who wants to get in touch with me, Beyond or Bounds, on any social platform, Ben Broadbridge, you'll find me pretty easy.
No worries. Thank you so much, Ben.
Appreciate you. Bye.